everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on the season finale of Mob Psycho 100 Season 2, and I may have freaked out just a little bit, just a wee bit, with the last episode, but can you blame me? Oh my god, Serizawa saving Reagan, Mob fighting Suzuki, everything is going down, Minagishi coming in, like just everything is all leading up, and Mob has made it clear that he wants to face Suzuki alone, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? So I'm so excited, but we have a big Reagan Thirst update to get through. I've had a lot of fan art and stuff sent into the Discord, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to watch this reaction. And the only comment that I have going into this, because episode 12 is about to air on Patreon, episode 11 on YouTube, is EQ was noting that in episode 12, or episode 10 rather, that Reagan, instead of saying Ikubo, which he's been calling Dimple, actually says Dimple in English and says it out loud. It's like, oh, and going back, I'm like, oh yeah, he does say that. I guess I just was like, since it was English, it just registered in my brain. Oh, he called out Dimple-sama. He really did. So, But episode 12 sent me. It was the best episode, maybe of the series so far. I don't know. As far as shipping and my heart goes, it was. But it was amazing too. The animation was gorgeous. So, I mean, it may not have been thematically the most impacting episode, but it was pretty damn good. So I'm really excited to see the season finale and what we're going to do. Next week, we have the OVA, and Truck on Patreon has volunteered to also send me links to an audio drama that they said is somehow connected to the OVA. That's all they said. Fair enough. So I'll be looking at the audio drama as well as the OVA next week before we start season 3. But I'm really excited. So, let's do the Reagan Thirst update. Not much else to talk about with that. I had a lot of pieces with the Reagan Thirst update. Some of them Reagan, some of them not. I really liked Isabel sharing this, where it was at their bookstore. And it said, I love it, it's a Mob Psycho, like a staff recommendation. And then all it says is, he's just a silly little guy. So cute. So stinking cute. He's just a silly little guy. Like, yeah, that's Mob Psycho. I've never actually seen the physical copies of Mob Psycho. I've not seen them in any manga store in my area, any bookstore I've been in. So now I need to look, because it's been a while since I've physically been in a bookstore, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I may have to look next time and see. I wouldn't mind reading the manga. I feel like Bones kind of spoils us by upping the ante, but I've heard the manga is darker than the anime, so that might be something to check into. We'll see, but I really thought that was cute. I also really like this one of Teru. I've got a lot of Teru and Mob art, but Teru with his hair down, I don't know. It just gives him a whole another princely look. It seems so weird. At first, I didn't even know who it was, and I was like, wow, Teru looks totally different. He looks like a Fruits Basket character with his hair down like that. I love it. And then we have this one image. I related so hard to this. I am not 40, but I'm in my 30s, so I'm getting there. It says, as soon as Reagan turns 40, they start treating him like he has glass bones and paper skin. Yeah, where he's like, it's just a fall. You don't have to use your powers. And Mob's like, you could have broken your old brittle bones. He's like, I'm 45. So I do think that's interesting that Reagan, when he's 45, Mob will be like in his 20s. So that's rather interesting, right? But I thought that was really, really cute. And then the other Reagan Thirst updates I have, this one is from Reagan's birthday, where it's a piece of official art of him from his birthday, and he's got like the lemon sour, right? With his little flushed cheeks, even though there was no alcohol. Very cute. I like this official art where it's Reagan taking a camera and he's like got the band. What's curious is I really thought Teru and Ritsu's guitars would be switched. I thought that Ritsu would have the blue guitar and Teru would have the pink one. That seems like more his style, but maybe they're going for Mob and Teru being like red and blue. Maybe, I don't know. And maybe they're going for Ritsu and Mob being pink and red because they're kind of like similar colors. And then Sho on the drums makes all the sense, right? I do love Dimple's green tambourine. That's so cute. It's adorable. And then the final piece is my favorite. Look at this business. Look at this business. This is gonna be a wallpaper on my computer at some point. I love everything about this. Not only the colors, but the One Punch Man advertisement on the train in the background. Dimple looking at whatever Mob and them are looking at. I like that Mob looks at the camera. Mob's the only one that sees the camera and sees our perspective. Teru, whatever the hell Teru is wearing, he's the only human being alive that could pull that off. Those shorts, that shirt, those tights, no one else living could pull off that fashion. But Teru does. And then I love, again, Reagan with the green coat and Serizawa with the orange coat, your secondary colors, right? And then Shimazaki has the purple coat in the background, and Serizawa looks kind of nervous, and he has his umbrella all wrapped up. Yeah, and then we have Suzuki and Sho, of course, is like all about Ritsu, surprising no one. But yeah, oh my god, this entire set of Reagan Thirst update fan art just sent me, so thank you all so much. I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, y'all, it's the season finale. What we gonna do? So we'll find out though, right? So I'm not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive into this sucker. I'm so excited, y'all. But we're gonna start season 2, episode 13 of Mob Psycho 100, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Cheers. What else can we say? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, that was a season finale. Oh my gosh. That gave you everything. That was an epic boss battle, the way that Mob Psycho knows how to do it. Oh my gosh. Man. There was so many. I didn't bring out Whiteboard Kun because I was like, it's for the most part, I feel like now it's great, right? There's been people in the comments. I've been trying to avoid spoilers so much. And around the time that season 1 was about over, somebody in the comments was like, there's going to be things in the OP that you'll find out later about. And I'm like, do not spoil me, please. Let me find out and be surprised. So the moment we started to pan out from the giant broccoli, I'm like, that's broccoli. It was in the OP. So I'm like, don't spoil me about that sort of stuff. So I felt a little bit spoiled about the broccoli because people were like, pay attention to the OP. There's going to be stuff that comes in it later on. And the only thing I hadn't noticed was that there was broccoli in the tomatoes, which we saw Reagan's tomato plant. So I'm like, so it's broccoli, right? So that part's not like a big shocker to me. I was like, oh, okay, that's what it was talking about, the OP. This is why I asked not to be spoiled. Because I was like, okay, it's broccoli. But the funny thing was, I forgot about the seeds. I forgot that Reagan gave him the seeds from the farm back at the start of the season, and those have been in his pocket. I'm like, you haven't washed that uniform since you didn't wash that uniform, bud? No. But the seeds were there in his middle school uniform jacket. And that's what the catalyst of the explosion, him containing all the psychic powers. And there's more to it than that. But man, what a great season finale. I couldn't have asked for anything more. I am glad that we touched base on the thing about power and corruption with Mob, because I have a feeling that's kind of been a central focus with Mob, is using his powers, and his powers slowly trying to find that balance between being able to use his powers to help others and the powers consuming him. Because it got a little scary at the start of this episode. I'm not gonna lie. I was getting a little worried for Mob, and I think Ritsu was very much as well, because Ritsu and Sho, I like them as characters paired together because they both have a concern. Sho for his father and Ritsu for Mob, obviously. And I like both of them having the same concern because Mob and Suzuki are very much alike. They both have this stockpiling ability, and as we see at the beginning of this, which I can't praise the anime enough for its animation. I feel like I'm flogging a dead horse when I'm like, this is probably the best animated thing I've seen like all week, maybe all month. I'm like, it's Bones' darling, and it has me really excited to see season 3, but God, the fight between these two, Mob talking about his power and his rage. I felt like Star Wars for a second. Felt like Yoda being like, anger leads to suffering, and suffering leads to hatred, and hatred leads to the dark side. And like, I felt like Mob was about to cross over into the dark side, because using his powers along with rage as an emotion does not lead to anything good, right? I think this series has done a pretty good job of establishing that that, with great power comes great responsibility, and the fact that being angry or hateful or having negative emotions tied to power can lead to very dangerous things. And Suzuki is kind of this embodiment of that. He is this embodiment of wanting to basically become the most powerful because he's been all alone. And he figures if he can be on top, then maybe that'll fill the void in his heart from not having any bonds with others. And he starts to drag Mob down with him. And God, I love that the other psychics even comment, they're like, this isn't even a battle anymore. This is just like a melee of cosmic forces. But God, the animation and him commenting about how Mob kind of gets swept up in it for a second. He gets swept up in fighting and the power and starts to enjoy battling Suzuki, and Suzuki comments on it. And that moment where he's just like smiling, and then he looks down and Ritsu is just looking up at him so pitifully. And Ritsu's like, brother, what are you doing? Like, this isn't like you. And Mob just stares at him and then realizes there's a double side to this power. Yes, it can do all these things, but then he sees the image of his brother on the ground bleeding and is like, no, these powers can also hurt people, and they're people I care about. And so he's like, no, this isn't right. God, and I'm glad that happened at the beginning of this episode, because I thought that was going to be a thing, that they were going to have to talk Mob down off the ledge, and it's been leading up to this point the whole season. Mob, way back in episode 4, was like, of this season, saying, who's going to stop me if I get to this point? Who's going to punish me if I get to the point of no return? And luckily, Mob is able to keep enough of his sense to say, yeah, I know I have people that care about me and that I love. I don't want to lose myself to this. And then, God, as he's getting flung through a building, and he just like, I love his fingers like scratching. How could I be so foolish? I love him just scratching over that. He's like, it was only a moment, but I almost let this power control me. Yeah, and that's kind of something creepy too about this series, is it's been established, or it's been kind of hinted at throughout, that this power kind of takes a mind of its own. Like, the power inside Suzuki kind of takes him over, and the question mark percent kind of has its own conscience maybe and tries to take over its host, whether that be Mob or Suzuki. And Suzuki does get taken over by it, like to the point where Mob's literally twisting his neck around and it doesn't kill him. It's like, ugh. Like, it gets to the point where they're not even almost human anymore. And I think and Mob asking, how did his life end up so hollow? And he's like, I can't judge you for the life that you chose. And he calls Suzuki unlucky, and Suzuki's like, how can I be unlucky when I've had everything at my fingertips? And then Mob's like, oh, I see. Let me rephrase that. You've grown up without bonds. You don't have friends or family that you have a connection with. Even though he has a son, finally we get some images of his wife. She's beautiful. And Mob's like, I was like you. And I like that stops Suzuki. Suzuki's like, I don't get it. As he's like, veins are all popping out of his head. He's like, why? Why are you crying? And Mob, that's the best thing about Mob, is that he has such a big heart and such empathy that he feels for Suzuki. Even though he doesn't like Suzuki, he knows he's done all this wrong stuff to his city and to everyone around him, he still feels bad for him. And he's like, he empathizes with him. He's like, I get what's wrong, and I hate it for you. And at this moment, Mob's like, I have tried to talk you down and try to help you turn over a new leaf, but you won't listen. And it's kind of like Mogami's words from several episodes ago coming back, saying there's some moments where kindness won't reach people, and you've got to do something about it. And, you can do like what Reagan says and you can run away, or you can take charge and do something. And Mob chooses to be like, I've tried to help you. You won't listen to reason. So I've got to do this now. I've just got to crush you and until the point where you can't hurt people anymore because you won't stop. And I like that as this, like, all these buildings are coming together to form this, like, ball. It's very Evangelion. It's almost like Lilith's egg flying into the sky and everything. I love that Reagan's like, what's going on? Dimple's like, I don't know. This episode provides such levity in these moments. But Ritsu saying, Mob, you've used this tremendous power yet again. I have a feeling going into season 3 that Ritsu is going to be rather concerned that he's had to use these powers to save them. I feel like Ritsu feels somewhat guilty because his brothers had to use all this ability and he's not been able to help him, but also is worried about Mob and what's going to happen to him in the future, right? I feel like that's going to be something with Ritsu we have to deal with moving forward. But man, the cinematography, everything, Mob like crying against the buildings and everything, it's beautiful. And then Suzuki saying, I've never felt like this before. All this power, like all this energy coming out from him. And trying to wake up, like, again, this is a grown-ass man in his 40s fighting a middle schooler who's trying to help him, like, atone for everything he's done. And Mob's like, I'm not strong enough. I don't have the power to show you a new path. He's like, I can't make you change. He's like, I want to. Like, I want to show you like I've been able to show Teru and the others. And Suzuki just gets so mad about that. He's like, you woke up this destructive impulse. Now you deal with them. Take responsibility for what you've done. And I was like, leave Mob alone. And God, but Mob's like, he's like, I've tried to do everything, but you won't listen. So I've got to take you down by force. And God, him like spinning him around. It's absolutely, he's like, we're influencing each other quite a bit. Like Suzuki trying to say that this is like Mob's influence. And he's like, I wish I could have been a good influence, but I can't. I like just Mob with the red eyes doing everything. Nope. I don't know how season 3 will top this, honestly. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But I don't know how. I don't know how season 3 could top a villain like Suzuki and Claw, because those have been such integral villains in this. I'm sure that Bones will find a way, and one will have found a way, but very curious. I mean, Mob, I would say Mob can be his own worst enemy, but Mob from this season, he's grown so much and matured, and I liked in this episode that he realized kind of the route he could go on with his powers, but chooses not to do so. So, and then Reagan this whole time is like, hey Mob! And Mob, as he's about to get flung away by Suzuki's blast, he remembers Dimple. He remembers Teru and Ritsu. He remembers Reagan. And says, this is nothing. Like, I can handle this. This is nothing compared to the fear of losing all that I have. And yeah, he's like, I've made bonds with all these people. He's like, no, as scary as Suzuki's power is, it's nothing compared to the idea that I might lose these people to someone like Suzuki, right? And him just going into the water underground. And then Suzuki becomes this monster. This power corrupts him, and he becomes like a literal monster. Like, that's the only way to describe him. Like, he's like a head on fire, everything. It is so bizarre. And it makes me a little bit scared that like Mob could have gone down that same route, right? He could have become a monster just like that, but chose not to. But yeah, that's just so terrifying seeing him like that. And then I love body improvement, fight on! Like, I love that Mob has like the big giant anime eyes that sparkle and has all the sparkles, and it's the body improvement club. Like, I love that Mob draws inspiration from all of these things this season, like from the body improvement club, drawing inspiration from Reagan, from Dimple, from Ritsu and Teru, like just all of these things. Even Tsubomi, we'll talk about Tsubomi, but even drawing influence from all of that in this season, moving to this moment where he fights Suzuki, who is this literal Ghost Rider monster. I love that the animation style throughout this entire episode changes. Like, it goes through different stages of how they draw Mob and how they animate him. I almost want to read the manga just so I can see the comparison, but I feel I might be let down because Bones like takes this to the next level from what I've been told. So maybe I'll be able to go back and look at it. But God, like just the animation, everything, like the sleeve busting up from Mob from the blast and everything. And then Suzuki can't hold in the power anymore. Like, he manages to, like, he just starts to self-implode. And Mob realizes that it's gonna cause an explosion. and he has to warn the others. I love that he jumps out and he's like, everybody run away. I love Reagan this whole time has been like, Mom, like, hey. And Dimple's like, Shigeo, you're alive. And in this moment, he's like, he ended up releasing too much energy and he's self-destructing. So that's a thing. If you release too much energy, you can self-destruct. Good to know. Little worried about Mob because he's just like Suzuki. But I love that Reagan, dad of all dads, like sees Mob and he's like, hey, he's like, you're bleeding like crazy. Like Reagan's like, okay, explosion, fine, but you're bleeding, Mob. I need to help you. Like, everybody gives Reagan such shit, but he was like so concerned about Mob in this episode and wanted to make sure he's safe. But he also has faith in Mob, so it's like, and he's like, Master, please run. And I love that Reagan has enough faith in Mob that he's like, okay, if you tell me to run, that's all right. So all that's left is this excessive amount of energy that is about to implode. And Mob's, he's like, I'm pretty sure an explosion will happen. And a huge one. And so I like Terror's been like kind of just sidelining, just standing there. And he's like, okay. He's like, so you're saying we won't be able to contain it. He's like, that means we should go. I like that Terror like soaks it all in. And Mob's like, get out of here. And Terror's like, let's go, guys. Like he instantly picks up where everything's leaving off. And he leads them all away. And Sho, I feel for Sho in all of this. Because it's Sho's father, who he knows was a good person. And probably deep down inside is still a good person beneath it all. And he's just standing there with the explosion being like, my dad could die from this. And I thought he was. I thought Suzuki was going to be dead. But Mob Psycho is not about that. No. But I thought he was going to die. And he doesn't. But I love that it's Ritsu that grabs him. He's like, hey, come on. Like, Ritsu saves him, right? I love it. He's like, let's run. We're going to get caught up in this if we stay here. I'm a big Ritsu Sho shipper now. I'm like, I'm in on it. I'm here for it. Give me Ritsu and Sho together. Like him clapping Ritsu on the back as they walk away. Like, just trying to act tough. And then meanwhile, Serizawa, the golden retriever of all golden retrievers, he's like that's the president's final light. Like, this is like the last of his energy. He's like our president who was trying to take over the world. And then I love that Hattori's like, shut up and run, you moron, you're gonna die. And that's when Dimple's like, where is Mob? And Mob went back to like help him. I like he's not nude. He still has his pants on somehow. The like remnants of his pants, but everything else is like stripped away from him, from Suzuki. And Suzuki thinks that Mob is going to kill him. He's like, you're going to end my life and sever the energy source so that the explosion won't happen. Which, in all honesty, I don't think that would have worked. I think that if Mob had actually severed the source of the energy, I don't think it would have killed Suzuki. I think that it would have just created the explosion regardless, and then you still wouldn't have had Suzuki. So I think Mob makes the right choice to try to contain it. I was really worried for Mob. I was like, the only reason I didn't think Mob was really in danger was because I was like, okay, we still have season 3. And I don't think we would not have Mob for season 3 of Mob Psycho. So I was like, okay. But he's like, before the explosion happens, sever this. And then I love that the barrier that Mob puts up is a rainbow. It's just all the colors. I love it. It looks like a kaleidoscope. It's gorgeous. And Suzuki's like, with your powers, you should have been able to handle this situation better. And Mob's like, just having powers doesn't mean everything's going to work out for you. So I feel like on the one hand, it's Suzuki telling Mob he needs to get stronger to handle possible enemies in season 3 that are going to be stronger than him. But also Mob's like, just because you have these psychic powers doesn't mean everything's going to go your way. Because Suzuki is case in point, right? And I love it's just the two of them having this conversation. And he's like, that's fine. And he's like, as long as you make the important choices yourself, then I'm the protagonist of my own life. I love that. I love that Mob's like, it goes back to the OP, your life is your own. Mob's like, I chose to do this. As long as I'm in control of my choices for myself, it's all that matters. And it's like, I love that. And I love that he's like, that's why I chose to be here. No matter how much I dislike you, to leave you to suffer on your own would just be too sad. He's like, yeah, he's like, I don't like you, but I was like, it would be cruel to let you just sit here and suffer alone, right? So I'm going to help you instead. And that line there is what makes him think of his wife. The line that he's like, it would be too sad to let you suffer on your own, so I'm going to help you. And I feel like that's exactly what his wife told him, because we cut to the wife and he's like, what are you going to do with that filthy cat? Like, you have this cat. And she's like, oh, well, the poor thing was drenched and shivering in the rain. And we see that she kind of has eyes that are a little bit like Show's. And she's like, and think about it. And she's like, Show will grow up into a gentle boy. And we see Show looking at the ants. Again, the bugs on the creature, right? We see the ants going up after the mealworm. He's going to grow up watching you after all. And so we need to be gentle. I feel like she came up to him and said she was going to help him because she didn't want to leave him by himself. I feel like she approached him in the relationship, and it was like the one time he bonded with someone was with her, and obviously they had Show. So, interesting. But then as time went on, he just kept getting more and more power, and it started controlling where he got violent and was just doing all these things for his organization and not thinking of his family or anyone else. And she's like, you can't move people's hearts with psychic powers. So she not only knew about the psychic powers, she was okay with them, but she didn't think that she's like, they're not going to be able to move people's hearts. Like, that's not going to work. But he was convinced that power was absolute. As long as I have power, people will follow me. So you have two dichotomies there. You have the wife who's saying people aren't going to be moved to follow you because of your psychic powers. They're moved to follow you because of your personality and your heart. And he's saying, no, power is absolute. That's what's going to control everyone, is this power. And I love, when you look at her from the side profile, she looks a lot like Show. Like, her eyes and her nose and everything looks a lot like Show. And she's like, do you think that's true for everyone? She's like, did you think your powers got me to like you? Like, it's kind of what she's implying. She's like, I didn't like you for your psychic powers. I liked you for you. And he's like, I do. Like, the moment he says I do, she's like, you baka. I'm saying that I liked you not for your psychic abilities, but for who you were. And you're denying that now. And then he says, Show's showing an interest in my powers as well. And then that's when she leaves. She's like, I don't want my son to be like you. And she leaves him alone. And then I love that he like opens up the doors almost as if he's looking for her and Show, and they're not there. And he wonders, when did I lose my way? Right? And so he wants to see his wife again, the one person that he loved. And he's like, when did I lose her? When did I lose this? And he like reaches out to grab for Mob, and Mob starts sucking. He's like, if I could absorb that power. And Suzuki tells him not to do it. And it all starts spiraling out of control. And I love that the power is like leaving Suzuki. You can see it like steaming off of him. And Mob says, you wanted to apologize, didn't you? You wanted to, he's like, then you need to say it loud and clear. And then at that point, the stuff hits the broccoli seeds, right? And then Mob says, that's right. And you see the green start to expand. I also have someone that I need to express my feelings to. Which is Tsubomi-chan. So, inadvertently, Mob ends up connecting to Suzuki, not only because of their powers, but because they both have people they want to confess their feelings to, which is Tsubomi for Mob, and it's his wife for Suzuki. Now, we'll talk about Tsubomi, but that's good. I hope in season 3 that Mob confesses to Tsubomi. I hope we get that over with. Let's just cut that. You know, it's going to be like the last episode when it happens. And I'm like, let's just get this over with, because I'm just, I don't like Tsubomi. She's just a manic pixie dream girl. I don't know. She's just, I felt like she was Tuxedo Mask, like the meme of Tuxedo Mask, you know, when he's like doing the meme and he's like, my work here is done. And Sailor Moon's like, you didn't do anything. And he flies off. I feel like that was Tsubomi-chan this whole season. She didn't talk to Mob. She didn't do anything. She just took a picture and she was there when Dimple was there doing stuff, like, that was it. She didn't do anything. It's just like, and I know what people in the comments are going to be saying. They're going to be like, you're giving Sabumi Chan a really hard time. And I'm like, I am, because I think Mob deserves better. I don't know. She just feels like a flake. I'm like, here's my thing. I think it's important that Mob, in this moment, realizes he wants to confess his feelings to someone. I hope he confesses to Sabumi Chan. I feel like she's very much that, you know, the first crush you have when you're in middle school, and she's like the first crush, and he's like, I want to confess his love to her. I just don't think she's going to be like end game with Mob, you know, like when they're adults. But if he needs to confess to his first love, and if she decides to date him, great. Just get it over with. That's the one thing in shonen when it's like the romance of the main character's like, one day I'll confess. I'm like, just go ahead and confess. Why are you waiting? Who are you waiting on? And for me, knowing that she may know that Mob likes her and she's not doing anything, I'm like, why don't you get some balls, Sabomi, and ask Mob out yourself too if you know that he likes you? Hashtag feminism. I don't know. I'm mildly joking. I don't mean to give Sabomi such a hard time. I feel like Jason Bateman in Arrested Development with Anne, with the character when Mob's like, oh, I love Sabomi Chan. And I'm like, her? That's how I feel. I give Sabomi a really hard time, but I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, if y'all start commenting about her in the comments, I'm just going to ignore those because please know that I mean no harm. I just don't care for her character. I feel she's a bit superfluous and a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but it's all right. I will hold off final judgment of her until the very end of the season. I may come around. I may end up loving Sabomi Chan. She may have an episode centered around her that I'm like, look at you. I like you now, Sabomi Chan, so much. But for right now, she just feels like not a trophy, but she just doesn't, she's too passive. I don't know. She's a flake. But she's not a character I particularly like in the series, but I've said enough about her. I will reserve all future judgment for when we get to her. But I am grateful, I will not lie, I am grateful that she does inspire Mob to remember that he has someone he needs to confess his feelings to, and thus him and Suzuki connect and realize that they still need to confess to people that they care about, and that love and affection there influences the psychic powers. It impacts the broccoli, and it allows the broccoli to expand. I'm glad they were able to dig Mob out of the broccoli. That's great. I love that a lot. And then, yeah, I love that Ritsu and them are so happy they saw him. And making note, Ritsu, like, basically dug Mob out himself, right? I love that Terry was just sitting there like, hey, man, what's up? And then I like that at first, we don't get to, one thing that is done really well in this moment is that we don't get to see what the hole in his chest. For a second, I thought, I'm like, did he give part of his heart away to Suzuki or something to save him or something crazy like that? But no, I didn't realize the broccoli seeds were still in his pocket. So that's really cool. And then I love that Terry's like, oh, Mob, you never cease to amaze me. And he's like, I do consider you my rival, you know? Don't wander off too far. I like that Mob's like, rival, what? I'm like, what are we rivals in? I feel like Mob's like, what are we rivals in? I do love that Teru and Mob have developed this friendship. It's fun. And then they end up going around. I like that they build up the broccoli pretty well, though. Honestly, if I hadn't been spoiled by the people commenting that I needed to pay attention to the OP, I would not have realized this was broccoli. But if you know, it kind of becomes clear pretty quickly. But then Reagan, I like that Reagan the whole time was really concerned about Mob and had that moment where he was looking into the explosion, like being terrified. And then I love that he's like, what the hell is that? I love that he instantly is like over it. He's like, oh God, what? That's great. That's great. And then, yeah, so basically Reagan, Mob like starts to collapse and Ritsu's like, what is it? Are you hurt somewhere? And Mob's like, no. He's like, I think my body's okay. He says, it's just but lately whenever I use a lot of power, I have a hard time staying awake afterwards. Like, he needs to rest it off, right? And then I like that Terror, like, lifts him up. He's like, well, I'll carry you partway over there so you can rest. Aww. And he just like curls up to go to sleep. Adorable. And then, of course, Ritsu's like, well, where are we going to go? And Reagan's like, oh, well, you can go to my house because Sho says that his friend's going to take a couple days to fix it. I love that Ritsu is instantly against the idea of going to Reagan's house. It's like the last place he wants to go. I'm like, they've been through all of this together over the entire course of the season, and Reagan and Ritsu are still at odds with one another. It's great. But then Terry's like, okay, bye. I really thought Terry was going to offer to let Mob go to his house, but luckily that doesn't happen because Terry doesn't have an apartment either. So they end up instead going to the middle school, to the Body Improvement Club. And I just love that Reagan takes one of the tracksuits and is like, well, I want one of these. Like, such a creep. But I love lower body strengthening month of the Body Improvement Club. And Goda showing up, being like, what are we doing? And Ritsu's like, no. Ritsu's like, no, it's Mob, we're fine. And Reagan being like, my heart just stopped, I was about to get caught. And then the Body Improvement Club has this like training, like lockdown camp from hell. I love it. I love that they just do the intense close-ups of all of them being like, we'll cook you food. We'll have everything settled. It's just, God, it's good. And he's like, well, you can guys stay at my grandmother's house. It sounds so intimidating. I love it so much. But then, yeah, there's the broccoli that we find out. And everybody's like, I wonder what that thing is. And obviously everybody's like, this is really confusing. Like, why is there this giant thing of broccoli? Or they don't even realize it's broccoli, right? But I love that Tomei's like, wait a minute. They're like, hold on. They're like, isn't it obvious? I love that she's like, this is the work of aliens. Of course, Tomei thinks it's the work of aliens, right? Of course. And then we have Tsubame, and then everybody is like amazed by it. They're like, is this the work of our beloved leader? Is this the work of our psycho helmet leader? It is. So it's funny that they all think that. The cult thinks that, and they're actually correct. But then we see Tsubame for like a hot second, right? She's like, wow, it looks like a vegetable. And she has like the peach thing on her phone. Mm-hmm. And I like it cuts from her to Misato. And Misato's like, I bet Mob-kun was involved. Right? I love it. She's like, I just know it. Perceptive Misato. I'm curious what Misato is going to do with the Psycho Helmet religion in the next season. Because I'm pretty sure she and the cult themselves believe that Mob is responsible for the giant broccoli. So I feel like that's going to be a thing. I just love the idea that this nuclear explosion of energy was contained into this giant thing of broccoli. And it makes perfect sense because we pre-established in the series that Mob could use his power to influence the growth of plants. And this lines up perfectly with the canon. I absolutely love that. All right. Fair enough, right? And so then we go back to the psychics, and I like that the Asahi and the one, they like try to take some credit for what went down, but Rei Kurosaki, she's like, I don't want to stay here anymore. She's like, I don't want to stay here and train because I like her reasoning. She's like, the idea of espers getting powers unnaturally, they might try to do what these, the workers did. She's like, they might try to use them unnaturally. And you should stop. She's like, because that's just going to cause more harm than good. I love that. I love that she's like, I really think we need to take responsibility and stop trying to do what Suzuki did because that's not right. And I like that Daichi and the other ones, they kind of agree too, which just shoot arrows through the two in the back. I thought at first that Aussie and the ones, I thought at first they were like having a nosebleed because of what she said, because you saw the red come out of them, but it was an arrow. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but now it does. And so I like the one guy, he's like, well, okay, we could stop that. But, if you guys want to just come by and be friends, that'll be cool. And it's nice. I feel kind of like you're an adult. Maybe you shouldn't have these middle school kids as your friends when you're like a full grown man. But it's innocent enough. He just wants them to come around and see him and be friends. And after all they've been through. So I get that. It's fine. I'll tolerate that. We go to the Claw members. Now, it was established everybody's injuries healed in this moment. So again, I think like the scars are gone and everything. So I wondered if Mob and Suzuki in that moment releasing all that energy because they were thinking of people that they loved, or wanted to confess to, if that love, that emotion maybe influenced the psychic energy and allowed them to be healed. I'm assuming that's what happened. That's my assumption anyway. But I love that now Suzuki and them, Sakurai rather, and the one guy are trying to like integrate back into society. And Sakurai's like, well, the organization's gone, so we got to find another way to make a living. And he's like, now the scars on my face are gone, I might start up a ramen shop. Because he wouldn't scare people away. And the guy's like, oh, the hospitality industry's not for you. I love these two guys are like, he's like, just put your body to good use. I like these two guys are still together, Sakurai and him. Best bros, right? And then meanwhile, I have an interview at a convenience store tomorrow. Interesting. And so I like that the two girls from Claw, they're staying together. And the one guy says he's going to ask Master Reagan if he can study under him. And they kind of diss him, saying that he's scary. Bless his heart. But then we have the government official, the one Esper that was working for the government, right? The Japanese government that tried to infiltrate Claw earlier in the season. He has Suzuki all wrapped up, saying that the broccoli thing is a work of a delusional criminal organization. I can't believe you turned yourself in after being defeated by a civilian Esper. And he's like, it's the truth. Where does that leave us, pros? So I'm amazed that he turned himself in. I'm amazed he's still alive. I thought Suzuki was going to be dead, but nope. He turned himself in. He turned over a new leaf. Okay, can we talk about, one, Sho's shirt is really good. I love Sho's shirt. And two, Serizawa's suit is amazing. That blue suit, get it out of here. That brown suit, nice. Looks great. And the one guy says, well, under normal circumstances, your dad would be executed, but he'll probably use for research instead. So I don't know if that's any better, being kept alive as a research subject, but I guess Sho and his wife can still visit him that way, oddly enough. And then Serizawa freaking has my heart. Serizawa is the biggest best boy that has ever been, because this whole time, like this Esper just told this man's son that, well, your dad's either going to get killed or used as a lab experiment the rest of his life, so those are pretty much the options. And Serizawa goes, why do you have to say that to his son? Like, he's so sweet. He's so kind. I love him so much. It's too sweet. And then he's like, well, it's not my call to make, so I can't say for sure. So maybe neither. And then Serizawa, he's like, well, President. And I do like what Suzuki tells him. He's like, hey, I never considered you all my friends. I was using you all, basically. And he tells Serizawa, he says, there's no reason for you to worry about me, but because you lack self-confidence, others are going to be easy to manipulate you. So you need to take better care of yourself. He's like, you need to be careful from now on. And he goes to work for Reagan, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So he's like, okay. And then he says, Sho, I wanted to see your mother again, but my pride severed that possibility. I'm sorry. And then Sho's like, why are you sorry? Like, I still see my mom. I like how he's like, I still see mom. She's still around. And he's like, she's always asking me how you're doing. I like that Suzuki has made this up to be this big end-all be-all circumstance. And Sho's like, our mom's still around. She's not dead. He's like, I'm going to see her. She's asking how you're doing. Like, we'll probably go visit you. I wish I could have stopped you before she found out what you'd become. I like that. I like the idea that Sho might have wanted to learn about his dad's psychic powers to stop him from becoming any more of a monster than he became, because that's what made her leave him. So he's like, I wish I could have stopped you before she found out what you turned into. And he says, when I called her this morning, she said she'd come see you this sometime. So don't you dare think this is all over. I love that. It's like, you still need to get an earful from mom. I love that. I love that he's like, you still need to get told off by our mom for everything that you've done. Like, I love that. And then he thinks about Mob holding out his hand. And I love that he extends his hand like he wants to reach out and grab it. That little tiny gesture. Oh, That means the world. Means the world. People need other people, huh? It's great. So then we go back to the spirits and such, and it turns out that we didn't need to start a war for an insurance claim. It was just a short circuit. Some mice got in, ate the wires, caused the fire. He's got insurance, so he's able to get a new apartment. And he's moving everything back in. And we see the tomatoes that were from the OP as well. He's like, thanks to that fire insurance that kicked in, we're able to get a fresh new office. He's like, but it sure looks bland. And so he tells Mob to do his thing. And Mob makes the little tree grow. And that's when Mob remembers the broccoli seeds, the hole in my uniform. And I love that they both look at it and they're like, oh, we did that. And they're like, well, we're going to forget we ever saw this. I love that they both like, are you going to talk about the broccoli? I'm not going to talk about the broccoli. I love they both decide they're just not going to bring it up. Like, we're not going to mention that this was our fault. Nope, not at all. I freaking love that panel of them just like looking off in the distance. That's so great at the broccoli. I love it. And then Reagan says, but man, he sure is late. Y'all, Sarazawa's working for Reagan. Ah! I can't. No, nope. I was afraid. I was so afraid that Sarazawa was going to go off with Sho and leave and we'd never see them again, which now I'm assuming Sho will go back to his mom, but he'll probably, since he's been able to go to and fro all this time, he'll probably go see Mob and Ritsu and all them in season 3. But I was afraid that Sarazawa was going to like just uproot and go back with Sho or leave with Claw. I was like, there's no way he's going to stick around in this story, but he is! He's working with Reagan, which is so perfect because Reagan can use Sarazawa to do the exorcisms and Mob can live his life. It's so perfect because Sarazawa needs someone to teach him and to be relied upon. Reagan needs someone to help him at his business, and he can help Sarazawa with his social issues that he's built from being a shut-in all these years. And Mob won't have to work with Reagan forever anymore. He can go live a life as a middle schooler. I said Reagan needed adult friends. This show delivered. It gave what we asked for. Oh my God. I love it. And Mob doesn't seem to know that Sarazawa was going to work for him. I love that Sarazawa like peeks his head and he's like, hey. He's like, I'm so sorry. I got lost. I'm very sorry. And he's like, thanks for the other day, Kageyama-kun. And Mob's like, a suit? You're going to work here. He's like, Reagan-san made me an offer after all that. I like that. Okay. Sarazawa is like, Reagan is a dapper man, but Sarazawa is like taller than Reagan. The height difference, y'all. You asked me not to ship Sarazawa and Reagan. The height difference. Sarazawa's like a bulkier man. It's so perfect. It's so perfect. And he's just sitting there with his hands like just kneading him like, I don't know what to do. He said, there's something that even I could do. It's the least I can do after my organization caused everybody trouble. Oh, and Mob's like, okay, you're going to work here. That's great. I love that Reagan's like, does his fancy hand movements. He's like, we're here to make a better tomorrow. So this is perfect for you. These two, I'm not ready for Sarazawa and Reagan to be a duo. Oh my God. I love, and Sarazawa's like, I'll do my best. Oh my gosh. He's like, well, before the client gets here, we need to give you a haircut. We got to do something about that. And he looks really good. Like Sarazawa, I love when Dimple puts a little bit of Sarazawa's fro on his head and like picks his nose and flurries of eye. The best. But oh my God, Sarazawa, like, Mob's like, you look so different. At least he looks like he can pull off customer service now. He looks pretty good. Aw. He's like, what do I do when a customer shows up? Like, he's so panicked. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, what did you do at your last job? I love this exchange where he's like, my orders were to smack them with an umbrella if I sensed any hostility. And I love that Reagan and Dimple look at each other and they're like, well, things aren't that different around here. Reagan being instantly forgiving, my shipper goggles are like just strapped on as tight as they can be with Reagan and Sarazawa. Y'all, I can't. He's like, if there's anything else you don't understand, ask your senior there. He's like, Mob, show him the ropes while he's still in training. I love that Mob is made like a senior, like someone to train him. And Mob's like, what? And Sarazawa, it's a pleasure to work with you, Kageyama-senpai. He's like, I just love that Mob's like, what do I do? He's like, now I'm getting nervous. So cute. And then, yeah, there's the new cafe and the spirits and such. Oh my gosh, y'all. Get our guests some tea. And then Sarazawa says, I've never made tea before. And they say, we're doomed. Oh my gosh. Beautiful season finale. Absolutely beautiful. I loved it. I loved it so much. That was great. I can't say that I loved it more than season 1's finale. Season 1's finale was really good. And this one was as well. They were very good for very different reasons. The animation, oh my God. Just amazing all around. But I really enjoyed this. This was a treat. So I'm very curious now. We're not going to do season 3 next week. We still got the OVA and there's going to be an audio drama I'm going to do together. We're going to do a 2-for-1 next week. The OVA and the audio drama. I'm so excited. I cannot begin to even tell you to get through this OVA, listen to the audio drama, and then start season 3. I can't believe we're on season 3. I feel like we just started Mob Psycho and we're already to season 3. It makes me sad because I don't want Mob Psycho to end. So definitely going to savor these next several weeks, enjoying the final season. This show is just so special and I absolutely love it. So I hope y'all are having a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed this reaction discussion. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will see you all next week with the season 2 OVA and audio drama for Mob Psycho 100.